What the fuck?
So back when I first watched this show, I pretty much wrote it off as Seven Deadly Sins, but with better character designs. And while that's definitely still true, I think the novelty of this series has aged surprisingly well. AK-47 La Kill is an anime that presents itself as not wasting any time or pulling punches, one of the fastest ways to earn my respect. Nobody else gives a fuck about that though. People act like this is the most insufferable viewing experience ever crafted. But why? This is a great casual action anime to watch with friends. There's usually a battle to the death every episode, of which there's only 24, so it doesn't feel like a big commitment. And whenever they aren't fighting, the dub usually steps in to pick up the slack.
Hi there?
And yes, he's gay.
Now don't give him the wrong idea. Yet.
Boy, I'm tryna fuck you, baby.
I can think of a lot of wrong ideas.
Boy, I'm tryna fuck you, baby.
Now again, this is a novelty anime, so its strengths are mainly coming from the premise. I've talked before and compared the Imperial Arms to My Hero Academia's quirks, as they're both part of the Devil Fruit ripoff category of anime power systems. And I think being able to stand on that podium without looking out of place goes to show how much mileage the series could have gotten if it wanted to go for more longevity. I'm kinda glad it didn't, but it still comes with some drawbacks. The pacing is actually pretty good for such a short series, but that's mainly because it doesn't really have a plot or character arcs. Now immediately you may be wondering why I'm going to bat for this show if that's the case. After all, I am he who demands perfection from anime that have the potential for it. But here's the thing. I'm actually surprised how well they did given those circumstances. Everything that happens in Akame ga Kill exists to facilitate one of two things: character backstories and fight scenes. Example, the world building sucks, but 80% of the show takes place in 2 locations, so who the fuck cares? Apparently this guy. The scale of the detail is set to fit the scale of each episode. It gives you what you need to know and then stops because it'd rather just show you the next ride at the theme park. And again, most people would see that as a bad thing, but they fail to realize this series was adapted from someone's Metal Gear Solid speedrun.
Is me, or is everyone a little extra jacked up today?
That's because the boss is back.
Words that kill. Would you speak to me?
The show is not art, but if you're gonna criticize it, please do it right. Especially since even the stupid shit in this series is fun to talk about. Like, why doesn't Akame use her trump card more often? Probably because it's nigh impossible to defeat her, so she just forgets. Why does Chelsea have a pair of Razer Naga surround sound headphones if regular phones don't exist in this universe? Because it looks cool, duh. And how is it possible for Shell to lose a close quarters battle if her scissors can cut through anything? Well, according to the wiki, it is extremely sharp and is said to be able to cut through any material. However, it seems that if the material offers resistance against being cut, cutting it becomes harder. So basically she has the Diva Ult equivalent of Imperial Arms then, fuck it. Compare this to Bulat, who just has armor. That's his entire ability, and it's a lot easier to balance as a result.
Hey, check this out.
It just fucks with me when there's this unanimous hatred for something inoffensive, meanwhile there are so many bigger fish to fry. Like, is this how people felt when I roasted Promare? God damn. The difference being that Akame tries, it's not a dead void of creativity that exists only to feed off of the living. Of course, whether or not its creations are airtight, that's another conversation altogether, but at least it puts in the work. Why even bother to hate that? Why waste your time waging a war over something as harmless as that? So for once on this channel, let's just calm down, take a deep breath, and have a nice, relaxing stroll down spoiler lane. If you haven't seen this show, you're probably wondering how there can even be spoilers if I just said it doesn't have a plot. Well, the series is also famous for the deaths, and I'll leave it at that for your final warning.
That's why your shoes raggedy.
That's why your mama dead. Dead as hell. What shoes she got on?
So this anime is actually brilliant. Most people read the title and assume Akame is the main character, then Tatsumi shows up and you see everything from his perspective. He's trying to raise money after his village donated everything they had to some e-girl on Twitch. So he journeys to the big city, but it turns out women don't exclusively exist on computer screens. This was unprecedented for me as well, so don't rank on him too hard. But how are you gonna let a bitch take your money while you're on a quest to find money? This guy just can't catch a break, and I actually really like that because his misfortune is consistent.
Would you like to join a guild? What? No! Would you like to see what some of these guilds talking about?
It's so consistent that he dies before the last episode. That's a little crazy. Akame is actually the sole survivor of the series other than Big Boss, and then you realize she was the main character all along. She was just so monotone they kept the spotlight off of her. I've watched this show 4 times now, and I still don't really know how I feel about that. On one hand, they did the thing I criticized Shield Hero for not doing, but you still run into the problem of them both being flawed main characters, so they kind of have to combine to form a whole one. Tatsumi's arc is over by the end of the first episode versus Akame, who is the human embodiment of unfinished business. So there's this gradual transition as you learn more about her and her sister.
This is Katana. She's got my back. This is Katana. Cut all you in half with one sword. Cut all you in half. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
But surely Tatsumi does something other than die. I mean, General Esdeath is the final boss of the series. You can tell because her name has death in it. So obviously he gets to fight her, right? Well, if by fight you mean her pegging his boy pussy, then yeah. Now that I think about it, there's an awful lot of color-coded women in this show. Are we sure this isn't a harem anime or something adapted from a dating sim?
You're in charge. Go ahead. Choose your fate.
So if you've been keeping up, this is an adaptation of Metal Gear Solid 5, Overwatch, and Doki Doki Literature Club all in one show. Not to mention it came out before all that stuff. Do you need any more proof that this is the best anime ever made? What other video game logic do I have to pull out of my ass to convince you?
I am gonna get a ton of experience points for this guy.
Of course, a show that leans this much into action is only ever gonna live or die by it, so what cool fights can you look forward to here? Let's take a look at Akame vs Zanku, Bulat vs Ranjit from Final Fantasy XIV, and the ultimate fight against Esdeath. All of which have plenty of combat, but are mainly the protagonists outsmarting their opponents and figuring out their weaknesses. Like that time Esdeath froze an after image, even though that's not how physics work. This theme is something that the series prides itself on, and just like everything else, it's always either cool or hilariously stupid. Mix that in with some decent sword clashing, and you have fight scenes that aren't anything to write home about, but again, aren't anywhere near as bad as people make it sound. I will admit the characters telegraph their attacks a little bit too much in this show, but I'm only doing it so I can make a Dark Souls reference. Cross that one off the list. And like I said earlier, don't worry about the context for the battles, because these people are more than happy to explain their entire backstories at the drop of a hat.
As for myself, I was lonely, ostracized because of my...
The real backstory I want to hear about is why the fuck Tatsumi's out here wearing sweaters unironically. Y'all really got me defending Mr. Rogers Nobuken right now. 7 out of 10, but only if you watch the English dub. This is like one of the 2 anime where I require that.
Anyone would have taken one of your blueberry pies.